The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on Market Street in Corning. And this is the Steuben County Office for the Aging section of our program. Steuben County Office for the Aging, committed to maximizing quality of life, safety, and independence. And that's because in the Hesselson studio, we have Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Oops, I got my camera off a little bit there, Phil. Perfect. There you go. How's it going?
Good, Frank. How are
Does
you?
it feel good to be back from Albany?
It feels great to be back from Albany. I always say the less time we're up there, the less damage that can be done.
Exactly. Now, how was it? We haven't talked since the end of the session. How'd it go right there at the end?
Well, it was long.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there was some good news that came out at the end. They did not end up passing the HEAT Act.
Were you surprised by that? Did you think they were going to?
I was, because they had made some changes to
Yeah.
try to appease to some of the upstate. When I say upstate, they mean the upstate Democrats.
Right.
They tried to make it like, well, you could have an opt-in or an opt-out of it, and said, well, we can look at it, and we'll do these test areas, but at the end of the day, they called it HEAT Act Light or HEAT Act 2.0 compared to the original. It still would have empowered the Public Service Commission to go into neighborhoods and decommission natural gas to those neighborhoods without the local neighborhood approval.
Devastating.
It would be devastating, and then the costs that would be associated with that. We talked about in the past, just the conversion costs alone from natural gas, which I remind the viewers, 60% of New Yorkers heat their homes with natural gas. 40% of our generation comes from natural gas. So to think that they go into those neighborhoods and dismantle them and decommission them, then their alternative would be electrification, and it would cost over $35,000 to convert your homes over from natural gas. And that's just not buying the appliances. That's just not the electric heat pump. You have to deal with the shell of your property. You have to deal with electric circuit upgrades. So it's significant costs associated with that. And that was one part of it. The other part of it was we refer to as the 100-foot rule, which did pass, and I know we could talk about that a little bit. The other big piece of legislation, and that HEAT Act 2.0 did pass the Senate, so that's why I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And the other one was the EPR. They call it Extended Producer Responsibility.
What is that? That's
basically a packaging recycling type of mechanism, but it would have put a number of mandates on businesses, and it would have cost consumers significant. It would have raised the price of food. It would have raised the price of other products. I mean, and they were talking over $1 billion alone just to consumers alone. Some studies showed over $4 billion across the economic impact. So fortunately, that didn't happen because there were some concerns, especially from business groups who spoke up on that. So the fact that those two things did not happen, but there were other pieces of legislation that passed at the end relative to changing the number of judges in judicial districts, relative to solar and wind assessments. And also, I think there was one relative to just some political stuff that would really allow people to be removed from a political party by the political bosses. And we had some discussions on that. But probably the one significant piece of legislation that they passed, was they ended the 100-foot rule for natural gas. And what that is for the listeners, this law has been on the books for decades, that basically if, say, you were a new homeowner, you're doing construction, and you wanted it, and you're within 100 foot of the natural gas infrastructure, you'd be able to tap into that, and you wouldn't have to pay that upfront cost. That would be subsidized, and it is a subsidy by all ratepayers in that service area. They said, well, it was the proponents of this said, well, it costs $200 million. But I argue that it's not that. First of all, that money's paid back. And second of all, it's not a dollar for dollar savings, because that's paid back over like a 60, 80-year period. And plus, when you have more users on the system, it brings more revenue into the system. So then what you do is you're actually helping the existing customers deal with the fixed operational and capital costs that are part of the system that need to be addressed. And what we're seeing is really there's this hostility towards natural gas. We've seen it from the Democratic Party for the past 15 years since I've been first a ban on fracking. You've seen it with the hostility towards pipeline development, denying pipeline projects that were approved by the federal government. We've seen it with the denial of air permits for new natural gas power plants, and even the renewable natural gas power plants of existing gas plants. And then these proposals like this, which allow the PSC to dismantle and decommissioned neighborhoods, and then this with the 100-foot rule. And like I said, I argue it would be a savings because when you have more people on the system, it saves the existing infrastructure for everyone else. And what it would have done is, what this goes in place now, is it will increase cost to homeowners, whether they're new homeowners, but also for existing homeowners who are, especially down in the city area, who want to convert from dirty oil to natural gas. And that's what they've been trying to do down there, because it's a cleaner burning fuel. But yet they want to take that subsidy away. But the subsidy is still in place for electrification, because what they really want to do is they want to make the natural gas system so expensive that fewer people will be on it. And then when you have fewer people on it, they're still going to be responsible for those fixed operational and capital costs. They want to make it so expensive for them, so they think the only alternative is to go to electric heat and get the electric heat pump. But it's not going to happen, because the demands on the grid with the electrification of the grid are significant.
Well, and I know they've been highlighting Hochul specifically saying, almost take it easy on the grid with the hot weather, right? Yeah. But we can't do it now. But yet we're going to be all electric by a pretty future date coming up right around the bend.
2040. I mean, the governor to put that out, the hypocrisy is just so blinding. The NYSO, the New York Independent System Operators, came out with their annual power trends report. They gave us a briefing. Said they're putting red flags up about the reliability of the grid, thinness in the margins, because they're shutting down existing like reliable dispatchable fossil fuel plants like natural gas power plants at a higher level than they're bringing more generation online. Especially then, all they want is renewable energy online, so they're not bringing on as much new stuff as they are shutting down. And then the NYSO has said that they said this is a red flag. They have to look at possibly powering up shuttered power plants. So there's a lot of moving parts with here.
Well, think how dangerous it would be if we lost our power the last couple of days.
Oh, I know.
How hot it is. But then you look at, I know right now we can't think about it, but think about the winter. I mean, people, with some of these snowstorms that we get, the cold winters, if you lose power and your electricity goes out, you can't cook, you can't eat heat your house, can't charge your electric vehicle to get to a safe place. I know it sounds like hyperbole, and we've said it before on the program, but this will ultimately lead to deaths.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, we talked about the storm in Buffalo.
Exactly.
Or 40 plus people died. If they were in Buffalo, in the Buffalo, Western New York area, I said 60% of New Yorkers heat their homes with natural gas. It's over 90% there. Yeah. So there would have been a lot more deaths if they were relying on this full electrification. If the PSC could have gone into these neighbors and shut them down, it just doesn't make sense. It's really, at the end of the day, it's part of their radical energy climate agenda that's designed to do several things. Number one, it's designed to dismantle the affordable and reliable natural gas infrastructure supply and delivery system. It's designed to take away consumer choice on how you heat your home, cook your food, power your building, and the vehicle you drive. It will jeopardize the reliability of the grid, leading to dangerous blackouts. And it, in my opinion, will continue our nation-leading out migration of more families, farmers, small businesses, and manufacturers leaving our state. And when you talk about businesses and you talk about energy policy, they care about two things: affordable and reliable. And if they can't get affordable and reliable energy in New York, they will go elsewhere, and we already see that happen. And then you have these big economic development projects that are going to have more stress on the grid, like the Microns. They get this new Chobani plant they're talking about. This all has more energy-intensive needs, but yet they want to get rid of dispatchable, emission-free resources like natural gas. I mean, I know there's been announcements about nuclear, and nuclear should be part of the discussion.
But what do you think? What do you think of that?
I think nuclear needs. I mean, I will support. Say, I disagree with the governor on a lot of things, but she has been talking about nuclear. But what's going to happen with that? It needs to be part of the discussion, because that's the problem with what we're talking about with the energy plan. By 2040, it's supposed to be net zero generation from fossil fuel. Well, and natural gas is always often referred to as a bridge fuel. But you don't tear down a bridge before you build a new one. But that's exactly what the Democrats in Albany and even the governor are doing with the energy policy in the state, because they don't know what the technology is going to be yet. They haven't, whether it's nuclear, advanced nuclear, hydrogen, renewable natural gas, carbon capture and sequestration, they don't know. But yet they're moving forward with this plan to full electrification. They want to electrify, even in their comments about nuclear, says we're moving to electrify the grid. Well, the grid can't handle, with the EV demands, with the building demands, And then you see it time and time again, and then everyone. I mean, I know it, the energy bills, the utility bills, the utilities. I mean, they're exorbitant, and it shouldn't be as high as are. They're going for rate increases on a regular basis, but yet my finger pointing at my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, and even the governor, is they're quick to criticize the utility when they go for a rate increase.
Right. But
they fail to recognize this. Their policies, their green energy mandates that are causing these increases to take place. In fact, the PSC in July of 2023 approved $43 billion in future ratepayer increases to pay for these green energy mandates. That was approved. And even on this, just going back to the 100-foot rule we're talking about, they said, well, this will save ratepayers $200 million. $200 million. But yet they fail to blink an eye at the fact that their green mandates from the CLCPA and these other plans is pegged at over $250 billion. $250 billion for the whole system wide. And they never actually did a true cost benefit analysis of this whole plan. They just kind of kept moving forward with it. Even Doreen Harris, the co-chair of the Climate Action Council with Basil Sagos, when we asked her how much is this going to cost consumers, how much is it going to cost ratepayers, her a couple years ago at the budget, she goes, we don't know. We have to see what the plan's going to be. It kind of reminded me of Nancy Pelosi saying we have to pass the bill to find out what's in it before we find out what's in it. So it just doesn't make sense.
And we got to take a short break, but when we come back, I want to talk about Congressman Langworthy made a visit. He was sitting in that exact chair.
Wow, that's great.
He came in and did it, but he had we had a nice conversation about Energy Choice Act, and of course we thought of you. We mentioned you on the program, so I want to talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and this is the Steuben County Office for the Aging section of our program, as we are being joined in the Hesselson studio by Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Phil, there's so much to talk about, and I know this is more of a federal issue, but I know that you can weigh in on it. Congressman Langworthy, kind enough to stop by the studio. I know there was a press conference earlier that day. Your thoughts on the Energy Choice Act?
Oh, it's a great idea. I joined the congressman at his press conference in Elmira. Basically about energy choice. We've been talking about the policies in Albany are designed to take away consumer choice of energy choice and how you heat your home, cook your food, power your buildings, and the vehicle you drive. And at the press conference, what I did mention is there was a poll or a survey that just recently came out, and it said 71% of New Yorkers, 71%, including 76% of independents, do not want a ban on natural gas. 2/3 of New Yorkers, including 71% of Democrats, want a balanced mix of their energy. They want renewable resources, but they also want natural gas. And that's the same thing we've been saying. Yes, we should be invested in renewable technology. It should be a part of our portfolio, and it is, but it shouldn't be the only thing. We should have natural gas. We should have nuclear, wind, solar, and hydro. Just like your 401k, you don't put it on stocks, cash, and bonds. You diversify to protect it, to make it more resilient. We should be doing the same thing with our energy policy in the state of New York. And I think what's very, very clear from that survey, that poll, is that New Yorkers want energy choice, including the use of natural gas. And I think this press conference that Nick had with this bill would basically prohibit local and state governments from prohibiting the use of these energy choices, whether it's for connections or a ban.
Yeah, ban on bans. I loved how he said that.
And it's just, like I said, it's just a pattern of the Democrats continue to move. This hostility towards natural gas, and I don't understand it. Again, it started with the fracking ban, and then it started with the pipeline issues, denying pipeline permits, even though the federal government were approving it. Then denying air permits for new natural gas power plants, in addition to denying renewals of existing natural gas power plants like Greenwich up the road, which provides 106 megawatts of natural gas power during the wintertime, during the really ice cold time. 90% of their power was going to the grid. And now with the heat, it's going to the grid. So we have to protect that. And then wanting to allow the PSC to dismantle and decommission neighborhoods. That's what their energy policy is, and it doesn't make sense. But I want to give credit to Congressman Langworthy to come in and talk about this very important issue. Energy touches everything. And if we want to help manufacturers, we want to help small businesses, we want to help our farmers, we need to make sure that they have energy choice available to them.
Yeah, and he did a great job. I'm so glad he could come on the program and talk about the Energy Choice Act for those that weren't aware of it. But I loved his term, ban on bans. One thing I forgot to mention, Phil, when we were talking about the HEAT Act, I think everybody's red flag should start raising, I guess. I don't know what you'd say, when they changed the name. Remember when they changed the name of the HEAT Act and something, what was it, like affordability?
Yeah,
so when you have affordability in the term, get ready, guard your wallet.
When we had the press conference in Albany on that, I said, you can change the name, but the details are still the same, giving that PSC that authority. And really, when it comes to the energy policy being advanced by the Democrats, affordability, reliability, feasibility, and choice are not a part of the discussion period.
Right.
And it's obvious from the utility bills we're seeing, from the frustrations we're seeing from communities out there. So we're going to continue to highlight. This all stems from 2019 with the passage of what they call the CLCPA. It's called the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. Basically, it's the Green New Deal for New York. And it's just since then, just to give the listeners or the viewers at home, in 2019, the residential electricity rate was 17 cents per kilowatt hour. Today, it's 26 cents per kilowatt hour. That's more than 40+% higher than the national average. And then you have the same increase in the commercial and industrial rate. So how are we supposed to get businesses to come to New York when they see this hostility towards energy choice, towards energy availability? Because we got this march to full electrification as far as new electric buildings act. They want to do it they want to do it to make changes to on replacement costs that we've talked about in the past. It's just one thing after another, and wind and solar is not dispatchable energy. I mean, we talked about that. You need, for reliability perspective, they said you need 27 to 45 to get into NISO, which is tasked with making sure the grid stays on, the power, lights, the heat. We need 27 to 45 gigawatts, and for the viewer, a gigawatt is the equivalent of powering 750,000 homes. Our total generating capacity in New York right now is 41 gigawatts. That's wind, solar, hydro, natural gas, nuclear, and oil. So they need 27 to 45 of dispatchable, emission-free resources. And again, they don't know what that's going to be, because wind and solar don't count because it's intermittent. So they don't know if it's going to be nuclear, advanced nuclear. They don't know if it's carbon capture and key sequestration, renewable natural gas, those other options. And that's the problem with this policy, because again, you don't tear down a bridge before you build a new one, but that's what they're doing with this march to full electrification, because there's so significant upgrades that need to be made to the grid, especially on the electric side, to deal with the EV mandates, to deal with the electric buildings decarbonization plans. It's a significant amount of money. And again, they talked about $200 million for the 100-foot rule subsidy for the natural gas. We're talking about over $250 billion for this conversion plan, and who's going to pay for it, but other than the ratepayers and the businesses and families out there.
There's a good point from a viewer here as we read the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. This is when we go to viewer comments. In 1901, a heat wave, 9,500 people died. The lack of electric power and air conditioning was the difference. At the time, the population in Corning was around 11,000. Who thinks we should have only one source of electricity? Right? I mean, you think about that, because I know we're talking about the heat now because that's all on everybody's mind. But in the winter is what terrifies me, because if you lose power, so I have an electric oven, right? I don't have the gas. And when I've lost power, the days of just going and making dinner by lighting the gas stove, you'd start to kind of get a little bit anxious because you have no way of eating and, having water, everything. So we're going to depend completely on that. It is going to lead to deaths. And I know I keep saying it, but people have got to be aware, be made aware.
It is. And I mean, listen, we all want clean air and clean water. We need a balanced approach. We need to do it in a feasible and economic way, but we're not doing that. And the fact of the matter, as I say this time and time again, New York only contributes 0.4% of total global emissions, 0.4.
Yep.
China contributes 30%, has 1,000 coal plants and building more every week. In fact, China expanded their coal generating capacity last year by 95 gigawatts. And our total generating capacity in New York is 41. So they're doubling our total capacity just in coal. Do we really think China's going to help us meet our clean energy goal? And I don't agree with anything Joe Biden says, but he once said, if China's not with us, we're wasting our time. We're wasting our time because China's not with us. Exactly. And if you want to add India and Russia, that's 40%. None of them are going to help us meet these goals. So we can get down to zero, but all we're going to do is destroy families, small businesses, manufacturers, and they're going to continue to leave our state and go to states like Pennsylvania, and Ohio, and Tennessee, and North Carolina that don't have these ridiculous radical climate energy agendas, that don't consider consumer choice and don't allow for fuel diversity and energy diversity.
And speaking of these radical ideas in the name of climate change or in the name of global warming, could you put in a good word, maybe give me the job in Albany where I get to count how many cows are on the farms? to see if I can be. If once I get to 701, I can call it a day, right? And
one of the
boot that farmer out.
One of the most ridiculous policies I've seen come out of Albany, proposed by two New York City lawmakers who have probably never seen a cow, never been on a dairy farm, never been on any farm, don't have any idea what's involved with it. Probably thinks their milk comes from the bodega or grocery store in the corner, not what goes into it. Same thing with their other agricultural products. It's just completely out of touch. We've seen a destruction of the family farm and the policies that continue to be implemented. You have the Farm Labor Act, and before the Farm Labor Act was implemented, when they passed that back in 2019, all these policies passed under one party control. Farm labor costs as a percentage of net farm income in 2019 was 63% in New York compared to the national average of 36%.
Yeah.
And net farm income was on a decrease. So right there, before that even happened, our farmers were at a competitive disadvantage. And then you have policies like this, and then you have the farm, like I said, the Farm Labor Act, and then you have these proposals like this. Fortunately, I don't think it's going anywhere. Even the governor came out and made a comment, but just shows the ridiculousness of some of my colleagues in the legislature and advocating for policies like they think they're going to control methane emissions by doing. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense.
From a pure political point, I see it on Empire Report, and I instantly know this is going to be a major part of my show today.
Yes, of course.
And then I open it, and then I see that the two people proposing, like you said, one's from Brooklyn, one's from Manhattan. This is political red meat. I mean, because it shows how radical Albany is. But the point that I made on the program is, no, Hochul signaled this isn't going anywhere. But you remember in the old days when something that radical would come out and go, well, at least it's going to die in the Senate. It's not going to. Now, when I read that, we joked about it, but I said, don't be positive. This doesn't gain some traction. Isn't that scary with the one-party rule?
It is scary. And, I would have to say it's kind of interesting. In the old days, it was the Senate was the backstop. It really appears to me with the Assembly is more the backstop for some of these policies, because the Senate did do HEAT Act 2.0 or HEAT Act Light.
Good point.
The Senate did do EPR. It did not happen in the Assembly, and I don't want to be too quick to pat the Speaker on the shoulder, but there have been some policies that he has slowed down, but, he says he's listening to his members. I mean, he did let the 100-foot rule. I saw his comments. I 100% disagree with him on it, but and some of these, I mean, and I will say, like, the one thing that we were advocating for, and this is switching gears, that he really pushed for, which I give him credit for, was pushing for the unemployment debt payoff, which should have been paid off years ago.
Yes.
Because other states took the COVID money and paid down those unemployment debts from the people who lost their jobs, and that burden was put on our small businesses. They were hurt during the shutdowns and closures, number one, and then they got hit again with this unemployment surcharge to pay for the debt. They got hit twice, and we should have helped them out earlier. But so, again, not to pet the speaker,
don't.
But personally, I like the speaker. I will say that to the viewers. He's a good guy. I like him a lot. My leader gets along good with him, but we have our disagreements on policies, and some of their policies go too far. But it has seemed like on some of these issues that have not progressed in the Assembly, and I hope that continues to be the case. But the Senate is really kind of going off.
Yeah, but I think people have to just realize that even something as crazy as a 700 cow limit, it's not completely off the table.
No, it's not, and nothing is done until it's done. And I mean, think about the ridiculousness of this proposal. Chobani just announced an expansion to their operations in upstate New York, and where they need more milk. They need more dairy product. But yet something like this could have hurt that. And over 90% of the farms in New York State are family-owned farms. What are we doing them? And you wonder why we continue to lose more family farms, because of the policies that are being implemented in the state of New York. I mean, we talked about that. I talked about this on the floor the other day when we were near the end of session, when I was talking about the changes they made to assessments for wind and solar. And we could talk about that in a minute. But one of the comments was made by the guy. He goes, well, these farmers like it. They're getting funding. And I got up and I said, listen, I don't blame the farmer.
No.
Who can blame the farmer for trying to make some money off their land? Because everything else we're doing in the state of New York is screwing them over, quite frankly.
Well, because you look at the taxes they pay on that land, and we told them you can't frack. How many times, just the cost of farming, finally they've got to say, to survive, we'll do anything.
Right, and a lot of their children don't want to take over the farm, so they got to do something to survive. So who can blame them for putting windmills or solar farms on their property? Right. And the problems with the solar and wind is taking up prime farmland too. And this with this bill, I guess I'm pivoting to the bill. Like,
Oh,
if it's
please
okay.
do. Sure.
This bill in Albany, basically, because there was lawsuits and it's still in the courts, would basically allow for the state of New York and state tax and finance to determine the assessment valuation of solar and wind projects in communities. Here's the problem: under the law, local assessors are tasked with making those determinations.
Sure.
So the state of New York wants to take that away. Why? Because they want more wind and solar development to meet these green energy mandates. And it's just a pattern that we've seen over the years of eroding local control, especially when it comes to wind and solar development. First, before the process even started, there was a secret process. Ultimately, the local town planning board and the local town board would have the ultimate say if we want to have a wind and solar project in our community. That wasn't good enough. Then they went to Article 10, and they had at least a local representation on the board. You'd have 5 people from Albany and 2 local representatives, but at least you had representatives on the board. That wasn't good enough because it wasn't happening quick enough.
Yeah.
Then they went to, they call it ORS, Office of Renewable Energy sitting. There's no local control.
Great.
They say there's local input. But if they want to put a solar farm in Cape, New York, or a wind farm, they can do that.
Yeah.
And without any local input, local control. Then they want to take it a step further to take away the valuation, the assessment valuation that the town can benefit from that, because they know these developers they can get a better deal by going through the state than dealing with the local IDA. And it's just ridiculous. It's one thing after another, eroding local control. We see it with the local control of elections. We see it one thing, with the even year elections, things like that. That's now,
And that is going to be law, right?
That is law, because there was an appeals court ruled that it was okay.
That.
So
our Republican, I thought they had one more chance.
I think there's one more chance, but
yeah,
it's going to the Court of Appeals in Albany, which it was stacked by the governor and the Democrats and all these. So, but I don't understand that proposal either. I mean, so in 2026, beginning of 2026, you can have the governor or the president on the ballot, and you can have a town supervisor or a town board member. They're never going to get the time of day. And
we can't get coverage anyway. Let alone because we just had the primaries we talked about on the program. That's why I made it such a goal to have as many of the candidates on as I can, because they have a struggle in a year like this. It's a quiet year,
100%.
That they can't get the coverage. So what are they going to do when you're up for re-election? Of course, the news is going to talk to you before they talk to someone in a very niche market in the town of Caton, as you mentioned earlier, supervisor.
It's so unfortunate. They said, well, we want more participation. And they're going to save costs. They're not going to save any costs, because charter communities like Steuben County, your DA, your county clerk, they get elected in the odd years. That's per their charter and the Constitution. So I don't know how they're going to change some of these things. And it doesn't affect the cities. It doesn't affect New York. It's just conveniently affects smaller communities, and it's ridiculous. Again, one thing after another. They made changes to election law too. So now, if you bring a lawsuit about election law, you can only go to one of 4 courts: Erie County, Albany County, Westchester, or New York City.
Great.
What do those 4 counties have in common? Who controls the judicial?
Yeah, exactly.
The Democrats. Yeah. So you Pat McAllister, who did our state and taxpayers and residents a great service by validating the redistricting maps that came out, followed the law, did the right thing. He was upheld by even the Court of Appeals in Albany by doing the right thing. So they didn't like that decision, so they changed the rules.
Yes.
So now a case like that, because it's election law, would never be able to be heard in Steuben County by Steuben County residents. They would have to go to Buffalo or Albany or Westchester, which makes no sense.
And just going back, because we got to take a break, but even your election, they're trying to fix a problem that wasn't a problem.
Exactly.
Why did we've got plenty going on in this state, right? People are leaving in droves. Businesses are leaving in droves. So many things that public safety, we have things that we want Albany to focus on, and yet they go down this road that I was complaining, if you will, about the low voter turnout in the primaries, and people get kind of confused about primaries. We asked them to vote 3 times. Now you're just adding more confusion to a process that they don't fully understand sometimes, right?
I agree.
And it's just creating more confusion, giving people more opportunity to say, I'm not going. It's not worth it.
It is frustrating to people.
It's so frustrating.
And I mean, think about the ballot. Think about how big that ballot's going to be.
Oh, yeah, that's
it's going to be 2 pages.
It'll have to be.
And so that's going to save costs? That's not going to save anyone any costs.
No, and it's not going to save any cost. People are going to go in overwhelmed, not knowing all the candidates not having time to prepare. It's not just you getting the word about your campaign. It's about me having the time and a busy day to look at all the candidates and say who's running for town supervisor when I want to focus on who's running for governor.
Right. And it's another option, example of Albany says we know best, not the locals. Another example of taking away local control. So whether it's local solar and wind and solar or assessments or local elections, one thing after another, Albany's saying we know best. And they've always said we trust the voter, we trust the voter. But yet, even when those proposals got denied on the ballot, you know, like no excuse absentee ballot vote, they go and change like 3 words, and then they say, well, it's a different program. And they still don't, and they still thumb their nose at the voters and pass them and get upheld in the courts. You can't make this stuff up.
You're right. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. And this is the Steuben County Office for the Aging section of our program, where we do an interview. And that interview this morning with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. All right, Phil, let's read some comments during the Steuben Senior Services Fund. Look at all these great sponsors I have. Steuben Senior Services Fund, empowering seniors to age at home. That's where we read comments. For Phil, has anyone ever looked at why and how these people from Pennsylvania can bring all of these truckloads of can returns to our local redemption center and recoup thousands of dollars of deposits that they have never paid because our centers closed due to the lack of funds? Well, I know, doing a little research, very little research on this, I think the enforcement's on the redemption center, because you're not legally supposed to get that nickel, obviously.
Right. Yeah. And I believe that is the case. And I think obviously in New York, you see like on these bottles, they'll say which states have it and which states do. But but if they come to a state like New York from out of state, maybe they're going to think that it is. But I don't. It shouldn't happen, but it should be something to be looked in. But how then, how is the redemption center supposed to do that?
Right.
And police that. That's the challenge with that.
Of course.
I don't know if there's codes they put on when they put them in like a store in Pennsylvania versus New York. I don't think that there is. I think they're all the same bottle. Just lists which states have the nickel deposit on it.
I think they have to look at it physically.
They have to look at
Yeah.
So it's something that probably could be looked at better. Than the way it is.
Yep. Ken writes in, the fact that the Democrats are pushing for all electric New York and what they know renewables will never be a reliable energy source is why Hochul has announced that they will be building a nuclear power plant. They think this will appease low information voters with a reliable electric generation source, and that they won't think about the infrastructure not being able to support an all electric New York. If we as a nation and state could stop politicians and their families from profiting from pushing to go to electric, this insane push for all electric America in the name of climate change would immediately stop. Thank you, Ken. And then a comment from a different viewer. I have a family member that has been working in the gas industry for 50 years, from New York to Texas. They have seen wells that have been fracked for over 50 years and still going strong with no issues. New York is so far behind the curve on technology concerning gas. Is this whole issue about government control?
Well, it is about government control. And, it will hurt the workforce, because that with the 100-foot rule we did a press conference, we had union representation there, that this 100-foot rule not only will increase the cost of home ownership, whether you're a new home or conversion cost, you will have a loss of high-paying, good quality jobs, and it will also increase the cost to ratepayers all in all. So it will hurt jobs as well in the industry for sure.
I know that was a quick little segment, but we ran late in the last one, so I'm going to take another short break so we can play catch up. When we come back, I've got to get your reaction. It's kind of a 2-part reaction. The mayor's race, the scary aspect to it, and then the kind of the warm feeling you get knowing that this could be the end of Cuomo. So we'll talk about it when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and this is the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of our program. All right, Phil, question from a viewer during Steuben Senior Services Fund. Phil, what do you think of Elise Stefanik joining the governor race for New York State if she does?
Well, I think we're very fortunate. There's been 3 people that have been talked about running. Elise, Mike Lawler, who I served with in the Assembly, very talented, has done dynamic work, and also from the Hudson Valley in a very difficult area to win. He took out the Democratic campaign committee chair in his first race, and Bruce Blakeman, the county executive of Nassau County. Now, I think the problem I think we have is, if it's a problem for the Republican side, is we got to get in the race sooner rather than later. Number one, and number two, in my opinion, we cannot have a primary.
Right.
We cannot be wasting resources on a Republican primary for this seat. So there's got to be discussions. I mean, obviously, the fact of the matter is President Trump will certainly have input in this race. I mean, he's already made comments about it.
He endorsed Lawler for Congress.
Yes, he endorsed Lawler for Congress. He endorsed Bruce Blakeman for county executive.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
And so, I mean, it's just really, I think that the key is from all of their perspective, whether it's Mike Lawler or Elise Stefanik, or they have to decide if they really want to run for governor.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have. I mean, that's a big undertaking to run for that seat. It's a tremendous commitment, and you need to be in the race sooner rather than later. I mean, Lee Zeldin was in the race of
April. Oh, it would be of April of this year.
And the worst thing to happen, he still had a primary. We have to avoid a primary. We can't spend resources on a primary. I know people say, well, that's good to have choice. I get that.
I know.
But realistically, it would be a depletion of resources. So
and
Elise,
you bloody up the candidates.
Elise she's a superstar.
She is.
Look what she dismantled those college presidents on the anti-Semitism and the protests. She dismantled them, and she's
Cuomo
got national.
and Hochul.
And yes, all of them.
Did you see that video with Hochul?
They all three of them. Elise,
Langworthy did great.
Lawler
as well.
and Langworthy.
Yeah.
They all did.
And Lawler did. Yes.
I hate to use the word tore.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched it. It was unbelievable. The great job they did with her on the migrant issue. I mean, or her lack of attention.
Exactly.
To so I said, listen, she would be any one of them will be a formidable candidate.
Yes.
But no one's asking me to find my advice. My advice is, if you want to be governor, commit, get in the race,
get in there,
and no primary. That's what I think we need to have.
And to your point, let's get that commitment now.
Yes,
because
there's a lot of time. You have to fundraise a lot of money. It's gonna be.
We can't wait till Labor Day or whatever.
Mike Lawler was in town. I met with Mike. He's a friend. He's trying to figure it out too. Just like Elise. Elise was in Albany. She met with our conference. Mike came to. So they're all coming to Albany and talking. So there's interest.
Yeah.
But running for governor is a huge undertaking.
Yes or no?
They want time to figure it out. I understand that, but they're going to have to make decisions sooner rather than later. And like I said, there's going to have to be conversation with the president. I mean, the president's got interest. I mean, certainly they want to keep Congress. We got to see. So there's there's still to be determined. It's not my decision.
No.
I mean, no one's asking me if I write for
they
my
haven't made that call.
Yeah. It's unsolicited advice I just gave the viewers. Let's get in earlier, make a decision we want to run, get in early, and no primary. That's my advice.
Absolutely.
Or recommendation.
So, speaking, you said Mike Lawler's a friend. Speaking of your close personal friend, Mama Dami.
Oh, my God.
No, I'm just teasing you. But what did you think? Okay, so like I said, there's that warm feeling that this could be the end of Cuomo's political career.
Right.
So we all feel good about that. But then when you look at, how do you say his name? You say it better. Zoran. Zoran, when you see that his victory, it goes to show you the hurdle that we have going back to your talk about governor's race. New York City's now voting for a socialist to be their mayor.
Socialist. It's crazy. I mean, AOC obviously was a socialist, and she was in one congressional seat.
Yeah.
So you see that in what he did. I mean, I'll give him credit from a political. He tapped into a youthful, energetic vote, and I think that's just. I think he tapped into a frustration with the Democratic Party from the base, just like we see people tap into the Republican Party from the base.
Yep,
but unfortunately, the base of the Democratic Party is not just progressive; it's socialist.
Yeah, and what's scary is that Van Jones said it perfectly: the marbleization of the Democratic Party with anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
that is terrifying to me. That he is. Some of the stuff he said, he would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he came to New York. Yes. That is a scary, lack of a better term, precedent. James Carville said yesterday that this is not a good thing for the future of the Democratic Party. A lot of people are saying it is. He's a rising star. Yada yada. This is a bad move by Democrats.
It is a bad move. And what happened with the general election now, the word on the sources are saying Cuomo's going to get out. Then there's sources that he's going to see how the ranked voting comes out, because he could be an independent candidate. He could be on the line. You have Mayor Adams in the race. And then, so I don't know what's going to happen. But this guy, I mean, listen, he comes from a wealthy family. And, so but he's socialist. Some of his policies defund the police. He's anti.
He wants social workers instead of police officers.
Yeah, he wants us. Okay, geez, boy, if you're being attacked, you want boy. I hope that you want a social worker or a police officer with a gun to show up.
Yeah, let's talk this out.
He's got he's tax to rich.
That's got to make Wall Street terrified right now. Because think about these people from Wall Street that are already moving to Texas and places that don't need.
You don't need to be there.
Yep.
And you have people wanting to tax stock transactions and things like that. His giveaways, free bus rides. I mean, they are have a deficit of people skipping, jumping the tolls. I mean, the deficit from the MTA. Free child care. And also he wants government-run grocery stores.
Yeah.
With probably from milk that comes from wherever, right?
Well, there's not going to be milk. We're not going to get that.
But he'll figure out how to way to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's mind-blowing to me. So, but certainly I think it opens up an opportunity to, if depending on what's going to happen in a general election.
Right.
Because there's got to be some common sense people down there. I mean, we did elect Rudy Giuliani. That was, of course, that was a long time ago. Bloomberg, that was a long time ago. Of course, they some changed a little bit, but
Bloomberg definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
But he knew he could. At that point, he knew he had to be a Republican to win because of Giuliani.
Exactly.
He wasn't a Republican, but it goes to show you how different that is.
But criminal justice, public safety, affordability, those issues aren't changing for people. And so it's gonna be an interesting race. But yeah, he could be he would be devastated for the city of New York. Period.
Yep. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we want to have a friendly conversation, a nice conversation. Cheer people up right there.
Yes,
how's that? Okay.
Absolutely, 100%.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hasselson studio, wrapping up our interview with Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. A quick comment from a viewer. I think a lot of people in New York City voted against Cuomo rather than for a socialist. We'll see at the re-election. I think there is a point in that.
Yes, I agree 100%.
It could have been different if that was the final, if it wasn't just a primary and that was the final say. Okay, good news. You met with a lot of champs that we showed on the screen. That great picture of the rugby team. The girls' rugby in Corning are powerhouses. So
they are.
Win 2 years ago, 1 year, had a little, didn't make it, but they were there, but they didn't win. And then they won again this year to their rivals, Orchard Park.
Yep. It's a great program. Both of my kids have come through the Corning rugby program. My daughter went on played Division I rugby at Mount St. Mary's.
Yeah.
Bob McGee, head coach, runs the program. He's also assistant football coach, so my kids have worked with him on both sports. He's done a great program, and it's the thing I like about rugby is it really kind of brings people together that might not normally be together, and it's just been a great program that's grown, and we've seen kids getting some opportunities for college as well. So it's a great program. They won the state championship. So unfortunately, couldn't be there for the presentation because I was in Albany. But they sent us some pictures. But we got them all the resolutions and proclamations to make sure they could hand them out there that night. And
you've been meeting with a lot of state champs.
Oh,
we got some talented athletes in our area, don't we?
We do. We were last week. We're at the Corning School District. They had the Corning softball team that we couldn't recognize last year because it happened after the fact. We recognized the team for them. Stella McLaughlin, she won, I believe, a state championship in the 55-meter hurdles indoor, and then she ultimately won another one after that. For I think 100 outdoor, and she couldn't be there because she was at nationals. So you got that, and then Taylor Farrell won national and state championships last year. She won her other national championship after we couldn't be there, so we wanted to present to them. Then, if you want to go back, we have Peyton Mullen from Dundee High School.
Oh yeah,
she's a sophomore. She just won her second state wrestling girls championship.
Wow, as a sophomore. She's going places. You got to go 4 for 4.
Oh, yeah. I said at the press conference when we presented to her, I go, she's going to be doing something that Patrick Mahomes could not do.
Yeah.
She's going to be going for the 3-peat, and I think she's going to get it.
Oh, good.
And the other one, I think we had Arkport, Cancerega baseball team, who won the championship last year after the time period that we couldn't present to them. And then we just saw recently, I think there was another Arkport championship. Like I said, Cello won again this year. We'll have to go back again for next year. Yeah. And also Horseheads down the road just also won a state baseball championship as well. So we have some pretty talented people and athletes and teams here. It just kind of signifies this how important it is and what it means to these kids. And that's the fun part of our job for sure.
Right, that's what you look forward to. One last quick thing because we're almost out of time, Phil. Tell us about this great photo.
Oh, Father Jim Yeager.
Yeah.
He retired after nearly 40 years. He was at Rochester Dice, but he was over in Bath for the past 17 years. I was an altar boy for him in the 80s, and then about 10 years later, I was blessed to have him marry my wife Laura and I in 1998. So he's just a great guy, and we had some good memories, and I was able to recognize him and present him a resolution. And it was a resolution that passed the assembly. So I always said that's something good that passed the legislature.
Yeah, finally.
So it was good to see my friend and Father Yeager and wishing him the best as he moves on to his retirement.
Well, Phil, thanks so much for giving us so much time this morning. We got to go, but if I don't see you, happy July 4th.
You too.
All right, we'll be back on Monday. We got tomorrow off. Monday, starting at 6 for Frankly Speaking. Look forward to it already.